Happy pre-Thanksgiving, motherfuckers! I'm sorry, I had to start hard, David. I'm sorry. We gotta come back with a bang. I took a chance.
I'm pre-thankful for your friendship, Jeremiah.
Pre-thankful. That stage right before you're thankful, where you still kind of take it for granted.
Yeah, it's not Thanksgiving yet, so I don't feel fully thankful, but I'm aware that I might eventually feel thankful.
Oh my goodness!
In a few more days.
Oh man, I got hit by this argument again, David. Have you ever had this one online? This is a little off topic, so bear with me. Why is it that atheists always say something about God if they don't believe him? Have you gotten that one?
not personally. I've observed it before.
They'll say "fuck God" or something, some atheist person, and these people can't wrap their hands around the fact that you cannot believe in something and still talk about it as a symbol.
Yeah, and not only that, but if you live in a society where leprechauns are just constantly given credit for everything good that happens, and wars are waged over leprechaun desires, and gay people can't be married because it makes leprechauns sad, then even though I don't believe in leprechauns, I'm going to be talking about how dumb that idea is constantly.
Yeah, and I'm going to be like, fuck leprechauns. Fuck the notion of leprechauns.
Fuck the whole idea of leprechauns.
Yeah, anyway. Okay. So, motherfucking Theresa.
Oh my god. So are you on board with the fuck Mother Teresa train? Because it's leaving the station today.
I'll tell you, we've had some time to research it. We're not by all means, I'm not at least any expert on it, but I've just been reading, and there's no end to it. I keep thinking, I'll get to the part where they start repeating themselves. Nope. Just more shit.
The rabbit hole goes deep.
So I figure we'll start out by just introducing who she was as a person and maybe saying some nice things about her so that we can, get on the same page. Here is where most people think. Okay. So this lady, Mother Teresa, was not born Teresa. It's not her name. Her name is Anjeze Gongshe Bojakshu. It's Albanian.
Really good Albanian.
I'm actually Albanian, David, so I don't want you mocking me.
You nailed the accent.
Anjeze Gongshu Bojakshu. Anyway.
It's weird that doesn't roll off the tongue very well, so I guess Mother Teresa would be an easier way of calling her.
Yeah, and as Catholics are wont to do, they picked up a saint as kind of another name, and she took it as her main name. The saint she took it after was Saint Therese de Lisieux, I think. It's Licieux. Is that how you say it? Lisieux?
Lisieux, yeah. So a French saint.
Yeah, she's a French saint, and she was like this, the flower saint. Okay, so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it gives it a little bit of background. So Catholics are really big on this idea of the holy face, or not holy face, but suffering. And this Catholic was really big on, the lady that Mother Teresa took her name after, was big on two things. And one of those was the holy face, this picture of Jesus' face as he was suffering, which is, I don't get Catholics. What the fuck? That's so dark. Why would you take a picture of someone while they're suffering from dying?
It's really it's a cult of torture. It's a death cult around torture. If you take it away out of its cultural significance and just look at it like you were an alien visiting the planet, you'll be like, wow, a good number of the species worships this god that is being perpetually tortured in front of them, and they can't get enough of that.
Yeah, it's so weird. But they thought that there's something holy about that suffering. Mainstream Christians probably, or at least I didn't, think there was anything special about the Passion of the Christ so much as it was, just a very sad moment that humans rejected this savior figure. But they think it's like this holy moment. They think that, and there's something called redemptive suffering, which is one of their doctrines that not all Catholics that I know of believe, but it's emphasized in a lot of Catholicism. And it's the idea that it's not like indulgences where you buy your way out of a crime. It's different. It doesn't buy you out of the crime. It helps payment for the crime. You know what I mean? So the sin. So you still committed the sin. You're still guilty, but it's kind of like doing a bail, or a bond. I'm sorry. Your time before the trial. If you don't get bailed out, you spent 6 months in prison waiting for your sentence. You get there, they say you need 9 months, then you've already served 6. So that's the idea, is the suffering.
It's where the self-flagellation comes from certain sects of Catholics who will just whip themselves with fucking scourges on their backs to punish themselves. Mortification of the flesh, if you will, making your body pay for its carnal desires.
So just to show that there was probably some legacy from this Saint Therese, yeah. She Mother Teresa herself said that that suffering was this holy, wonderful, wonderful thing, and she said it's like there was someone who was having just a terrible amount of pain from terminal cancer, and he was just writhing and making all sorts of noises, and she said, "This is the suffering that Jesus experienced as well. So Jesus is kissing your face, essentially." And yeah, so before we get into the bad stuff, I'm just saying that that's some of the doctrine that she was kind of famous for, and there's her legacy. The white nun thing, by the way, like the white habit, the sari. Did you know anything about that?
Mm-mm.
So apparently that's like something that she made popular for two reasons. The saris were sold around that area, blue, red, and green, and she picked the blue one. The reason why is because the color blue is in Catholicism is associated with the Mother Mary, at least by the report that I read. And so she chose that, and also to sort of blend in with the poor, because it was very passable at the time in India, I believe.
Calcutta.
Yeah. So it's for two reasons. It was kind of humility and also symbolism. And so she kind of made it famous.
Awesome. Good for her. So you're a psychologist. Can you foresee any potential problems with somebody who considers suffering to be redemptive, working in among the poor and the sick and the dying?
Yeah, that coupled with the fact that they're encouraged to have a sense of attachment, sort of like Buddhists, or detachment. So
Yeah.
Buddhists are supposed to be separate from love, from everything. You're separate from the world. You experience your own. You are your own person, and that way you don't have any. Well, I don't want to speak for Buddhists, but you get the idea. And Catholics the same way. They're encouraged, or nuns, sorry, are encouraged to be detached from the will of others. You don't want to be corrupted, but you also don't want to have ambitions outside of God, right? You don't want to be doing it for a person. You want to be doing it because it's holy. So theoretically, it makes sense. Put those two together. Holy shit, we could have a real problem. If you buy this stuff, like if you, I often say that I don't think anybody in Christianity, myself included, I reached this moment where I realized to myself, I don't actually believe the stuff the Bible says. I'm kind of interpreting it for myself, because it says through me all things are possible. Logically, all contains a subset of literally everything, right? Not a subset, just a set. And that means flying. That means, shooting a bazooka at your face and eating the bullet or the round. I mean, literally anything, but no one believes that. They only make it the stuff that's possible. Like amputees not growing back arms. That's possible. Come on, grow it. But they'll get on to you if you suggest that. They're like, come on, don't be a dick. And I'm like, not being a dick, just wondering why can't that happen.
And what sucks is that it is possible to alleviate poverty, but she went about it the exact opposite way. Like her approach was that poverty will always be here, and so the best we can do is get them off the streets, put them on some cots, give them some aspirin, and call it a day. But that's not how you get rid of poverty. That's not even. It's barely a Band-Aid on the problem. It's just moving. It's just sweeping the gutters of the trash and putting it out of sight. Like it's not. It doesn't help the situation.
Yeah. So the thing is. Yeah, she thought that there was like that nobility in suffering, so she thought that.
A quote from her. It says, "I think it is very beautiful for the poor to accept their lot, to share it with the passion of Christ. I think the world is being much helped by the suffering of the poor people."
See, does that sound like someone who's trying to help the poor so much as...
No, she finds their suffering beautiful. She says, accept your lot, which means maintain the status quo. You're going to fucking die in poverty. Just get over that for a minute. And then she says, the world's being helped by the suffering of the poor people. How the hell am I being helped because of the suffering of poor people? I guess my iPhone helps me, and that came from the suffering of poor people. But I don't think that's what she's trying to say.
It's like the echoes of an older belief. Remember when there was these ideas of divine placement inside of classes, right? Like
it's very fitting that she's in India, where the caste system was still going strong, because it really does seem like it's divine will that you suffer in the gutter if you're poor.
Yeah, so you put that background inside of those two doctrines we were talking about, like the detachment and then the holiness of suffering, and you got yourself a problem. I don't think I'd put that person in charge of my hospital. You might get some weird shit happening.
In fact, Christopher Hitchens, in a book I'd recommend to anyone who wants to find more information about this, it's called The Missionary Position, Mother Teresa in Theory and Practice. He said this: Mother Teresa was not a friend of the poor. She was a friend of poverty. She said that suffering was a gift from God. She spent her life opposing the only known cure for poverty, which is the empowerment of women and the emancipation of them from a livestock version of compulsory reproduction. Many more people are poor and sick because of the life of Mother Teresa. Even more will be poor and sick if her example is followed. She was a fanatic, a fundamentalist, and a fraud, and a church that officially protects those who violate the innocent has given us another clear sign of where it truly stands on moral and ethical questions.
Yeah, and there's so much shady shit. So before we get into that, she's now a saint, right? She passed the beatification.
Yeah, the beatification usually requires 5 years after the death before they can even start doing this, but the church fast-tracked it along because she's such a fucking PR like bonanza for them that it's like, okay, Mother Teresa, let's make her a saint. And it requires 3 verified miracles. And I say verified with sarcastic quotes around the word because the church verifies the miracles. So, that'd be like me verifying that my teaching credentials are fine. Just go ahead and hire me. I'm a good teacher because I just graded myself and I'm doing really well.
Sorry, Mr. Drake. Here it says list of references. It's your name in all 3 slots. That's your phone number too.
Yes, you can call any of those.
All right, hold on. Hey, I'm calling on behalf of David Drake. Is he a good hire?
Fantastic hire.
Oh, there you go. You're a saint. Click.
Yeah, that's how it works. In fact, I was reading about the miracles. Did you see which ones got her sainthood?
Yes.
Okay, which one's your favorite? Because my favorite miracle is this guy had a tummy ache, or this woman had a tummy ache, and they're like, oh shit, a tummy ache. It's like, yeah, it's pretty bad. And then the doctors are like, well, here's some medicine. You have an ovarian cyst. Yeah, it was a woman. She had an ovarian cyst. That's what was making the tummy ache happen. And the medicine made the cyst go down, and then she got better. But also, at the same time, she got some beads or some shit from Mother Teresa, and she prayed with those, and then they attributed the getting better to that.
Here's the story that this lady tells. Her name is Monica Bezra.
Yeah.
And she said, all right, so she's an Indian woman as well, and there's a lot of mysticism that goes on over there. Remember, I mean, they have a lot of poverty over there, and so with the poor and uneducated, you get these crazy tales, and people just believe them. They're like, yeah, that seems like something that could happen. Well, she said she got this locket with a picture of Mother Teresa in it, right? And she sets it on her stomach, and a beam of light emanated from the picture, curing the ovarian cancerous tumor. Except it's kind of weird because the Catholic Church is like, oh, okay, well, we'll go check up on that. They go there. They talk to the doctor, Dr. Ranjan Mustafi, and he spoke there. He said that the Catholic Church came to me and asked me and said, hey, we heard about this miracle. Give me your records. And he goes, not only is it not a miracle, this is a routine course of treatment. Beyond that, it wasn't cancer at all. It was just a regular cyst that was brought on by tuberculosis. It's a regularly treated thing over here. A lot of the poor get it. It's not a big deal. And we gave her the exact same course of treatment we give to everyone. This is absolutely not a miracle. Beyond that, Monica Bezra's husband himself went on record with the New York Times as well, or not New York Times. The New York Times was Dr. Mustafi, but went on record saying, yeah, that wasn't, he said, quote, my wife is cured by the doctors and not by any miracle. This miracle is a hoax. Yeah, so and multiple people, including, they even said, hey, is there anyone on your team? The Catholic Church said this to Dr. Mustafi. He said, well, is there anyone on your team who will confer this as a miracle? And he said, no. And then they said, all right, well, can we get the medical records? And he goes, I'm not giving you medical records for somebody. No, I'm not going to do that. So he refused them. And despite that, they were like, yeah, sounds good. I like it.
Yeah, it's enough evidence if you're looking for evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another miracle, I don't know if this is one of the ones from the canonization, but this is the first miracle they've attributed to her, was this filmmaker came by, and they were filming her House of the Dying, which is her famous place where literally it was just a big warehouse filled with World War I era cots where people would die, and with no medicine and no real comfort. They would just go there and die off the streets. Yay! He went there to film it, and it was really dark, and they're like, oh man, we're not getting good shots here. And they're like, but we just got this new Kodak film. It's like this new film. Let's give it a try. So they did all the filming, and then a few months later, they're back in England, and they're developing the film, and they could see all the details. And the film technician was like, wow, good job, Kodak. But before he could say it, the other guy was like, you know what this is? This is the holy light of Mother Teresa. This is a miracle that we're seeing.
What?
Yep.
To further shit on that previous miracle. I forgot to mention that the health minister of West Bengali in that area said, all right, look, we're getting this investigation by the Catholic Church. Let me see those records too. So he got it to him, and he went on record saying, yeah, he said there's nothing unusual about the course of her illness and cure. Based on the prolonged medical treatment, she had recovered. She was in treatment for 6 months for that cyst, and it disappeared. That's not a fucking miracle. There's no beam of light.
That's how hospitals work. That's how medicine works.
That's the weirdest miracle. Okay, wait. Here's the last one. So the third one is there was a man who had brain tumors, and how was it? Hold on, I just looked it up. I have it up here somewhere.
Oh, this is the Brazilian guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a viral brain infection that created multiple abscesses, and so he's walking down the wedding aisle with his daughter, and he's barely able to walk. And then by December, he's in a coma, right? And so his new wife is praying to the saint of the gutter, which is motherfucking Theresa, and they all started praying with her. And then when they walked in there, guess what?
What?
He was awake.
Wait, but what about the brain tumors?
He was fine.
Wait, hold on. What? He just remitted? All his brain tumors remitted?
No, don't worry about that. He just woke up from a coma.
But wait, what about the tumors?
Don't worry about that. He woke up from a coma. It's a miracle.
What the fuck?
The Vatican Medical Commission voted unanimously saying that the healing was inexplicable.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah, it's a Vatican Medical Commission. That's like being a doctor, except you're a Vatican Medical Commission.
That's a great comparison. It's a pilot. It's kind of like being a teacher, except, well, you're a pilot, so not at all like a teacher.
Is there a doctor in the house? Well, I'm a teacher. It's like being a doctor, but I'm a teacher. Let me have a crack at it.
I saw something funny on Instagram. It said, "Oh my God, this man's dying. Is there a doctor on this in the house?" And it says a vegan stands up and says, "I'm a vegan."
Yeah,
that was inserted everywhere. Yeah. So Mother Teresa, questionable, but now she's a saint. We know kind of her past, and she's known for helping the poor and the like. Now,
yeah, that's what she's known for, thanks to incredibly good PR by the Catholic Church.
Yeah. What's weird is I hadn't heard anything bad about her until you mentioned it one day when you're like, "Man, Mother Teresa's a dirty old whore," or something like that.
I think I said, "Fuck Mother Teresa, she's a monster."
Yeah, and then I was like, "Oh, here goes David saying some weird shit again." Like when you infamously said Magneto was the good guy, and I was like, "What?" And you're like, "No, hang on," and then you just go about doing your thing. But this one, you actually had reasons for.
Yeah. This isn't one of my, like, Gaston is just a misunderstood jock trying to do the right thing rants. This one's actually based in reality.
All right, so let's hear some of it.
Where should we start? Let's start with, I want to go back to the idea that she's not a friend of the poor, she's a friend of poverty. So one of the ways she would get donations was through abandoned babies, because in Calcutta and in many poor regions, women have a lot of babies because when you're poor and uneducated and you have no access to birth control, you get pregnant a lot. But you can't afford to feed them or you die because it's Calcutta, and so you have a lot of orphan babies just everywhere. So she would have these orphanages full of babies that were Dr. Chatterjee categorized these homes as cults of suffering, where children were tied to beds with and little to comfort dying patients but aspirin. So like a lot of people would go and investigate these things, and you would find babies like just, oh, look how cute, and they bring them out there, and donations would come in, people donate millions of dollars, and then they take the babies in the back room, and in the back room they're tying them to beds or they're just neglecting them. But here's the thing, Jeremiah, if there are a lot of babies being born, what would you recommend?
Probably some birth control, David.
Nope, that's a sin.
Oh, okay.
In fact, it's the greatest sin of our time. Mother Teresa was a tireless political activist against abortion and birth control. Now, abortion's kind of a shady subject. A lot of people have arguments against that. There's a lot of different views. Not even all atheists are in favor of abortion. But birth control, anyone that doesn't have an imaginary friend in the sky can say, hey, yeah, go with it. Birth control is a great thing. Like, am I overstating how great birth control is for our species?
I'm a big fan, David.
I noticed you've been married for quite a long time and you have 2 children.
Yeah, it's weird, but we have this biological drive to hump the ever-living crap out of each other as humans, right? Like you see someone pretty, you want to hump them, and that goes for any sex or sexual orientation. You're just like, oh, I like to hump on that thing for a while. Unfortunately, that causes babies. And back in the day, there used to be like 20-something kids. I remember my grandpa was part of a generation. He was 20. There was 22 kids in his generation, in his family. 22 because, well, birth control wasn't like as effective as it is now, or I don't know what methods they used, to be honest. But he was just like, well, it's not like it was today where you choose when to have a baby. So you're gonna have tons of kids, unless
which creates a cycle of poverty, which creates all the problems that Mother Teresa supposedly is trying to ameliorate. When she got the Nobel Peace Prize in the 70s, she did this big long speech saying like, I'm accepting this prize on behalf of all the poor people and the people with maggots on their face who are suffering. And it was like, oh, and all their white guilt's kind of like alleviated a little bit because, oh, there's a white person going out to India and taking care of the brown people for us. That's so nice. It's a little bit of colonialism. It's a little bit of the white man's burden. It's all the things that were really popular back in the day when Mother Teresa was relevant. And then she goes on into this, and this is a direct quote. And I feel one thing I want to share with you all. The greatest destroyer of peace today is the cry of the innocent unborn child. For if a mother can murder her own child in her womb, what is left for you and for me to kill each other?
That's like when people. Okay, so. It's that phrase of it's whenever somebody says something, it's like, okay, so if somebody only watches Fox News, I'll start here. You can pick them out of a crowd because of how they talk, right? They say some crazy ignorant shit that doesn't reflect reality. They say something like Hillary Clinton hates the middle class. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Wait, what? They're like, yeah, they want to dissolve it, and they want to bring the country down so that the Saudis can come and take over. And I'm like, whoa, you can't possibly. Okay. That just shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the other position. And same thing here. When religious people, it's like her, she was saying that might as well kill each other if we're going to let that happen. I'm like, what? That just shows that you have no empathy for the other side or understanding. That just shows blatant ignorance.
And the greatest threat to peace, really? Abortion? That's the greatest threat to peace? Really? Abortion? That's the greatest threat to peace? Yeah. And birth control. Again, she would go through South America and India and all these other impoverished countries and tell them, and in Africa, to their face not to use condoms. Okay, well, first of all, AIDS is spreading all over Africa at this time when she's doing that. So I'm going to put her as at least indirectly responsible for a lot of death on that side. But also all these children that are being born and abandoned or born and just left behind because their parents die in childbirth, that's on her too. She's a fucking monster.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I mean, you have to take a hard line against abortion because, actual monsters she was buddy up with. Like, take, for example, Dr. Francois Duvalier, Président à vie, which means what, David?
President of what?
À vie.
Oh, President's Advise?
AVIE, sorry. Or A space VIE.
Oh, President for life.
Yeah, for life. Okay, that's never a good sign, right? This guy's name is the Baby Doc, right? Mm-hmm. He was part of a regime in Haiti, and he was brutal and just incredibly cruel. Like, this guy was known for doing the worst stuff. Not only was there torture, murder of detractors, anyone who spoke out against him. The guy was a madman. He was involved. There was an underground trade of body parts and drugs. Like, this is shit that people make up in scary movies to be funny. He was involved with that. This guy was a fucking monster. Part of this brutal regime in Haiti. And no, it's cool. Mother Teresa was like, "Oh, I'll go and accept an award for that guy for quote," because he said that she quote loves the poor. Oh wait, no. The Duvaliers, that they quote love their poor and their love was reciprocated. So. Okay, so if this dude was to give you an award, would you show up and be like, yeah, I'm cool with that?
No, that'd be like accepting an endorsement from the KKK.
Yeah, even if they give me an award that was like greatest cool guy ever, Jeremiah, I'd be like, oh, that's really sweet of you guys to say, but go fuck yourselves because you're the KKK. Oh yeah, and then there's a former communist dictator, Enver Hoxha, who was part of a pretty brutal suppression. Where was that area? Hold on, I read this. Maybe it was Albania. damn, I guess you'll have to look it up in the interest of time. I'll look it up in a second. But she laid flowers on this dude's grave. She's like, yeah, I'm cool with you. Like, I don't, if the Grand Wizard died right now, I'm not going to go lay flowers on his grave. I mean, I feel bad for him as a human because, you know, the rat is always right. He's a racist fuck because of his environment, right? I get that. But on the other hand, he's a racist fuck. So,
yeah,
no.
there was another guy an American that fleeced a lot of people in a pyramid scheme. Like, people lost their entire savings, like their retirement, everything.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember this one? And he donated a bunch of money to motherfucking Theresa for her charity work.
Yeah.
And I say charity in scare quotes again because that's not what that was.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
And when he was being put on trial, she wrote a fucking letter to the judge and saying, "Hey, you should be nice to him. You should forgive him and show mercy."
I wonder why. He has all this fat money that they may try to get back. So that's exactly what happened. So the deputy district attorney wrote to her a letter saying exactly what this guy had done, Keating, and said, "Hey, look, he defrauded a bunch of people, you know, regular ass people, of their entire life savings, and now they need the money back." And she refused to reply to the letter. She said, no,
she would not give it back.
Yeah, what the fuck? But that's
go ahead.
No, that's because she's spending it on all these great things, right?
That's what I was gonna say. She's stocking out hospitals with cutting edge life-saving technologies. Yep. She needs the money to care for the poor. It's a lesser of two evils thing, right? Well, the money's ill gotten, but at least it's serving the greater good.
And before we get into that, so just to give you the scale of the money, so this guy wrote a fat check. That's great, but you're like, oh, how often does that happen? So there was a lady who was in New York, and she was the former sister with the Missionaries of Charity, this organization under her, and she said she would regularly walk in and, you know, cash checks of $50,000 or above, and they said, okay, but, you know, regularly, what does that mean? That's one of those, it's like when people say a lot. A lot of people are racist. I'm like, what percentage? A lot is one of those words that just means more than you would expect. Mm-hmm. But then she said, we probably made around just $100 million a year, usually. Yeah. And they were like, wow, $100 million. They said, yeah, we made a lot of money.
And that's tax-free income that can't be traced because churches don't have to show their records to the IRS or anybody. So it's just untraceable secret money.
Well, even in the places where they are, like, where was that? There was a place that demands that you do that. I think it's Italy. Yeah, I wish I could remember all this stuff really well. But anyway, they said, hey, you have to show us your financials. We're not like the United States where if you're, you know, if you're church organized, you get a free pass. We still have to see him. And to this date, she's the only organization in that country that doesn't do it. She refused. She's like, no, I'm not going to. And they haven't kicked her out, which I think is weird. But anyway, so no one's seen these financials, but the only
millions of dollars by any estimation.
But, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars a year going to poor people. All right, she's probably changing motherfucking lives, right?
No, in fact, she was not. She was running like third world, not even good third world country, like just terrible, shitty. Again, I'm not exaggerating. Think of a warehouse divided into two rooms, men in one room, women on the other, a bunch of cots on the floor. And then you get some aspirin every so often. They had nuns, not nurses. Nurses have medical training. They had nuns washing hypodermic needles with cold water. And one of the volunteers, she says, "Why are you doing that?" "Well, to clean it." "Well, yeah, but why don't you sterilize it? Why don't you boil the water and then wash it?" And she says, "There's really no point, and there's no time."
Okay, here's also something crazy. They reported, and this is infamously reported over many of her of these quote unquote, what do they call them, hospitals?
Hospices.
Yeah, hospices. Okay, or homes, or I've heard of
a hospice is just where you go to die. So
yeah,
that's exactly what these places were. There were places to go while you died, and there were signs on the wall that say like you're going to heaven now, you're going home to Jesus. But that's basically, it was just a warehouse where you went to die because you'd given up, and they'd given up on you.
Yeah, and before we get into a little more of that, another shady fucking thing talking about you're going to heaven is they would perform baptisms against people's sometimes knowledge, but sometimes will.
Oh yeah, just sprinkle them while you're getting the wet rag on their forehead.
Yeah, they put a wet rag on their head, and they're like, and they would mumble the rites over them. So they're like, I claim you for Catholicism.
And that was the real point of this. It wasn't to help the poor. It was to claim souls for fucking Jesus Christ.
Well, yeah, because the mission of a place that's to help the poor would be what, like rehabilitation, vocational training,
actual medical care.
Yeah, actual medical care opportunity, like providing opportunities, maybe employing some people yourselves. Like a soup kitchen also has people typically, or well, in my experience, they have homeless people working there and they're on salary. They get paid to serve other homeless people. That's smart, because then you're like, oh well, you're helping both people. This guy's a steady job now, who's spooning out soup, and all these people who are hungry don't have jobs can have food based on this guy. It's like the opposite of a pyramid scheme. It's helping everyone. Anyway. But reportedly, across all of these homes, they were using needles to the point where they were blunted, and then they would throw them away. The same needles, and washing them off with cold water. And
yeah,
and the fact that they didn't give they didn't buy any medical care. They didn't buy anything because they think that she claimed that it violated their vow of poverty.
Yeah, in fact, they were so good at getting donations that people donate entire furnished mansions to her as homeless shelters or as hospices or as places for the nuns to live. And she would go in and she would have them tear out all the carpets, all the furniture, all the draperies, all the beds, anything that would give them any kind of material comfort, and leave it on the side of the road. And then the nuns would just live in squalor together, and they would get diseases like tuberculosis and HB, whatever diseases happen when you're a bunch of women living in like fetid, disgusting conditions with no like running water, because she thought A, luxury would take you further from Jesus, and B, suffering would make you closer to him.
Yeah. So all of this can be explained, I think, pretty easily. One is she seemed to truly believe that what you just said, the more close to poor you are, the more like kind of noble, there's a nobility there. Like she did seem to see it as a pathway to get closer to God. So it does make sense that just like when people are like, oh, what is come on, the Inception. I keep thinking of the word Inception, where they torture people in the Middle Ages and shit.
Yeah, the Inquisition.
Inquisition. I had that problem where if you ask someone a direct question, or you ask your name yourself a direct question, you have a harder time retrieving it. It's hilarious, rather than asking around it. Anyway, the Inquisition. It does make sense that a flash in the pan of suffering to save your immortal soul, eternal soul. I trade that every time.
Yeah, and if I was convinced that she believed that, I wouldn't call her a monster. I would call her misguided, like an accidental monster, like a misguided fool who caused a lot of pain.
You're not convinced, though.
No, and before we get into why, I want to give this just a touch of pathos. I was watching an interview with one of the volunteers, and she said there was this boy who was like in terrible pain. He was like 13, and she was like, "Can we help him?" And there was this doctor there, because Doctors Without Borders and other doctors would like come over and like try and help out as they could. And the doctor was really frustrated. She's like, I can fix this. And she's like, "What's wrong?" She's like, "It's a simple infection of a kidney, and it's gone too long without treatment. Really, antibiotics could have fixed this, but now he needs surgery. If I could just get him to a hospital, this could easily be fixed, but instead he's going to die in horrible agony." And she's like, "Oh my God, why can't we take her to hospital? Let's ask some of the nuns." And she's like, "I've been trying for days. They won't do it. They said if we take him, we have to take everybody. And, they don't want to do that." So this little boy dies in horrible agony because they can't afford to take him to the hospital, because then they have to take everyone to the hospital. Well, guess what, fuckface? If you hadn't been sending hundreds of millions of dollars to the Vatican to buy more fancy gold chairs for the Pope to sit on, you could have taken that kid and everyone else to the hospital. Hospital rides, taxi rides are like 10 cents in Calcutta, and the hospital bill was like $50. You could have afforded it.
Yeah, that is nuts, dude. I heard a lot of reports of these Doctors Without Borders, or these visiting people who would come and try to help out. They'd come back and they were abhorred, and they refused to go back. There's even a story of a guy, I don't remember his name, I came across in my reading, who had HIV. So he had HIV, real tough time. He said he was just incredibly in pain, I guess, near the end, depending on what you get, what you catch that kills you. You're in pain. So he was in a lot of pain. But his sister felt so bad for him, she took him in. She lived around the area, and she's like, "You got to get out of there." He begged her. He was like, "Oh, please, please, please." So finally he gets out. Anyway, he gets out. And then what he says about these places, he's like, "Oh, it's terrible. Everybody's depressed because they don't let you watch TV. Like, they've taken them out. They won't even buy them with all their money. They won't let you play games. They won't let you do anything that's fun, because you're supposed to be there's something noble about just concentrating on your suffering," which is the worst thing when you do CBT for chronic pain. It's the worst thing you do. That's it. You're like, hey, don't perseverate on it. It's like when a kid looks down and sees this knee is skinned. Before that, he's playing and playing and playing, and then you go, "Dude, your knee's skinned." You look down and he goes, "Ah!" and then holds it, and you're like, "Yep, that's what happens when you fucking just perseverate on your pain." But Anyway, he goes, yes, everyone's depressed and dying. And then when you're not dying, when in those brief moments between the pain, because we don't get any fucking pain medication, we're just depressed as shit because they won't let people come and visit either. His sister couldn't even visit him. So it's just terrible. So anyway, he gets out, and near the end, it's becoming too expensive and too time-consuming to take care of him. She's like, I can't. And he just begged for his life, and I can't. I don't remember if this is the same guy who killed himself, but somebody else had killed themselves in the threat of going back as well, because it was that bad, these places.
Yeah, I mean, remember my story with the Magic Kodak film and the Miracle? Like, it was a dark, dank, like, dimly lit, no electricity, stinking. People would defecate in front of each other because there were no facilities that were private. You just had to poop in a pot in the middle of the room. Like, we wouldn't treat prisoners this way, and this is how she treated the poor and the dying, and got on her fucking high horse about it, and like went around like meeting presidents and dictators and prime ministers and queens and winning Nobel Prizes over this shit. She tried to the Sisters of Charity were going to open up a homeless shelter in New York City. Did you read about this one?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so they're going to open up a homeless shelter, and the city's like, great, we've been actually trying to do that, but we just haven't been able to make it happen yet. That'd be great if we could just pass it on to you, because that's why churches get tax exempt status, by the way, is they're supposed to be doing this charity shit that governments, like, you can offload that onto them. It's like, cool, you took off some of the slack, you don't have to pay taxes. So it's not so that you can pay off pedophiles and like settle cases out of court. Catholic Church, fuck you. Anyway, they're trying to open up this homeless shelter, and a philanthropist actually had a big building. They were going to tear it down. He's like, you know what? I'm going to donate it to the Sisters of Charity so that they can use it for the shelter. So they got this building for the price of $1. Okay. And but it wasn't up to code. Like New York City and most cities have building codes. Before you can use a building, you have to have it up to code. And all that it was lacking was some fire things. So they took care of that. But then there was one more thing. They're supposed to have an elevator for handicapped access, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Mother Teresa was like, no, fuck that shit. We carry the handicapped around on our backs like fucking pack animals. That's how we do it in India. That's how we're doing it here. And they're like, yeah, but no, like, you gotta have an elevator. That's just the law. Like, that's the it's going to cost $1,500. You can install an elevator. It doesn't have to be a big elevator. You can put a sign in front of it that says no nuns allowed, because she was worried that nuns would become lazy and luxurious if they had an elevator, if they didn't have to climb up the stairs with sick people on their backs. She's like, you can just have it there. You don't have to use it. You just have to have it for the building. But she would not fucking budge on that. And so the city was like, you know what? How about this? How about we pay for the elevator? You get it for free. You get this building for $1. You get the elevator for free, and you can use it as a homeless shelter. She would not budge. She said it was against her religious beliefs to have an elevator in that building. They ended up scrapping the whole project, and the homeless shelter was never actually opened. And you know what the newspaper, that I think it was the New York Times or the Washington Post, one of the rags that had bought into this Mother Teresa hype. You know what the newspaper's headline for that story was?
What? You
can't fight City Hall. Bureaucratic red tape shuts down Mother Teresa's homeless shelter.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Fuck this lady. Okay, so already I'm thinking to myself, all right, there's a lot of monstrosities, but me as a profession and now just kind of as a habit, I tend to go, what produced this? I'm a behaviorist, right? So like, I go, what in their environment? Like what could possibly be the case? You look at people like von Leyden, or actually that's a bad reference because you probably won't know, but he was in charge of this Anabaptist movement, and he was this charismatic guy who said he could hear things from God, such as, polygamy, it's a thing now. And you're like, let's see, does he really believe that? Or...
Dan Carlin, for those of you interested, has a really good Anabaptist episode about this movement.
Yeah, called Prophets of Doom.
Yeah, it's pretty much like 18th century Mormonism or 19th century Mormonism, but in Europe.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. But anyway, so coming off of listening to that, like so many months ago, I'm thinking about this guy, and while I'm listening to it, and many historians apparently have these conversations too about people. They're like, do they really believe that? Like, if there was a historical Jesus, did he truly believe he was the Son of God, or was he a charlatan? Right? That's the question. And the cool thing back then is you could tell the difference. And this you could. So there's a guy that was in charge named von Matthias, or Matthias, probably how you pronounce it, I guess, if you're German. Maybe not. And then von Leyden. So Matthias is in charge, or Matthias, I'll say Matthias because we're Americans, and that's probably wrong anyway about Germans. Matthias, and then you had his flunky, von Leyden, right? There was a clear and distinct bright line between the two on who, if they actually believed it. You know why? Because when it came to put himself in harm's way, von Matthias was like, fuck yeah, and he goes out to fight 500 people with 9 other guys, truly probably thinking he was going to win that. He's like, oh, God just told me I need to go do this. So he did. He truly bought into this, right? He wasn't faking the funk. But then von Leyden, when it's like, oh, hey, it's time to do that thing, you promised that if at this point, if we hadn't been delivered, we were supposed to kill you. We were supposed to sacrifice you. And he's like, oh, hold on. Nope, just hearing that was metaphorical. It's spiritual death that's supposed to happen and spiritual rebirth. So that's what just happened. I'm actually stronger now than before. You know, that's some bullshit that you would say if you don't actually believe it. So for me, I'm looking at these stories right now that you're telling me. And, you know, as we're talking about all these things, I imagine that the listener is probably doing the same thing, thinking, okay, but if she probably truly believed it, was she a charlatan or a fanatic, right? You're thinking, all right, if you're a fanatic and you truly buy these doctrines, it does make sense to tear all these things out and do all these things.
Yeah,
right?
it just becomes a tragedy, but you're almost as much of a victim as the other victims if you believe it, if you truly believe it.
Yeah. So, but there's a cool way that this one's falsifiable. How is this falsifiable, David?
Well, you would predict that if she thought that suffering on the way to death is the best way to get close to Jesus, and that actually makes the world a better place to focus on your suffering, you would expect her to spend her dying moments in one of her houses of the dying and just lay on a fucking cot surrounded by feces and misery until she croaked.
Yeah, right. Which, wait, she had some heart failure problems at the age of 87. And she didn't stay in the country that she was in at all, did she?
No. She actually flew back to a first world, cutting edge, state of the art hospital and got the best medicine and medical treatment money could buy.
And she received morphine until the point of her death. Morphine.
No, that's weird. Morphine. Doesn't that stop suffering?
Yes, piece of shit. The stuff that she had access to, and people like the Doctors of Borders people, I don't remember if it was them in particular, but it was one of these groups of doctors that came in and was like, hey, take this morphine. And she goes, no, get it out of here. These people don't get that. But then when they were like, oh, hey, we're going to give you morphine, she's like, cool, rad.
Yeah. It turns out suffering is only beautiful with someone else suffering. Weird.
A piece of shit. Now that's where I flipped the switch from like, holy shit, this lady's an accidental monster, to holy shit, she's actually a piece of garbage.
That's why I'm saying fuck Mother Teresa. And she had a bunch of letters written before she died, and she wanted them. Her wishes were that they were burned after her death. Well, guess what? They weren't all burned. Some of them still exist. I'm going to read one to you, and you just tell me how this sounds. I call, I cling, I want, and there is no one to answer. No one on whom I can cling. No one, alone. Where is my faith? Even deep down, right in the end, there is nothing but emptiness and darkness. My God, how painful is this unknown pain? I have no faith. I dare not utter the words and thoughts that crowd my heart and make me suffer untold agony. So many unanswered questions live within me, afraid to uncover them because of blasphemy. If there be God, please forgive me. When I try to raise my thoughts to heaven, there is such convicting emptiness that those very thoughts return like sharp knives and hurt my very soul. I am told God loves me, and yet the reality of darkness and coldness and emptiness is so great that nothing touches my soul. She didn't even fucking know if Jesus was there, and she was making people suffer and die for him.
And let's just point out that if this was in her last moments, this makes this even worse, because that's pretty normal. So you have this thing in health psychology where, unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to do this. It's palliative care, which medical personnel use the same term, but it means like as they're dying, it's sort of this easing of their passing kind of idea, right? It's like, all right, so give them morphine. You know, you don't have to worry about long-term problems with morphine. You don't have to worry about long-term problems with benzodiazepines. So that's like Xanax, right? You can give them all you want because, you know, they're never coming off it. So they give them that to keep them happy. You know, we do all kinds of things to try to just make it, you know, it's a bad time of life. She didn't allow people to do those. And people can have the most terrifying thoughts and stuff in the last few moments, you know? And she refused to let them have the same quality care. And I'll bet that they were offering her those sorts of things. I actually don't know. I didn't say anything about mental health stuff. But morphine for sure helps ease it. Makes you feel real good. So, like, the thing she's experiencing is somewhat normal. And the fact that she made so many people suffer without, in those same moments, without the proper care, it makes me really upset.
Yeah, in 1994, there was an academic Canadian study that justifies Canada's existence as a country, as far as I'm concerned, that looked into Mother Teresa's facilities, and they found that her, quote, rather dubious way of caring for the sick, her questionable political context, her suspicious management of the enormous sums of money she received, and her overly dogmatic views regarding, in particular, abortion, contraception, and divorce were at fault.
But don't forget about Nathan Fillion, too. Come on, Canadians. And Neil Patrick Harris, right?
That's true. We get a lot of Canadians come to America and become awesome.
Yeah. Come to America. That's kind of true. Oh, man.
But does that balance out Justin Bieber? That's for the philosophers to debate.
The philosophers. These are haughty subjects, people.
These are heady debates indeed.
And there are definitive answers. You just need to await the intellectuals. Yeah, so that's just some of it. I mean, you can Google the rest of it. There's just stuff. Hitchens wrote a whole book about it. There's television series about it. The New York Times started becoming like, oh my gosh, maybe she's a horrible monster. I'm finding stuff all over the place, which let me just underscore the fact that would be helpful if we waited the 5 years before the beatification process, because this shit would have been coming out, but we didn't.
Now she's a saint. It's like we were too hasty.
No, the church has never been too hasty in anything, David.
Oh my God. So what she was and what she continues to be even in death is a propaganda piece for the Catholic Church to raise money. She brought in millions of dollars, and that money did not go to the poor. It went to the Vatican, where it sits in a fucking vault so they can pay off child molesters, the victims of child molester families, from prosecuting them. That's the legacy of motherfucking Theresa. And my only regret in doing this research is that hell is made up, because I wish she was burning there right now for her crimes against the poor and the weakest of humanity.
And imagine that you had, okay, so there's this thing I'm going to make another analogy, but I hope that it keeps us both entertaining and also informative. One, there's this idea that microphone time, right? So in the UFC or sometimes in wrestling, for example, after a fight, they get the microphone. And what you do there often dictates how your career goes. So, for example, if someone wants a title fight, they may shout out, "Hey, so-and-so, you, I want that title, or I want that belt," or whatever, right? They do some boxing sometimes too. Or it's your moment to gain fans or to thank your sponsorships. And this is, in the video game, for example, this actually has demonstrable effects. If you thank your sponsors, you get more money, etc. Or you get more fans and popularity if you say, "I did this one for the fans." And the reason why it's coded that way is because it seems to be the way that it works. So microphone time is very important. She had the ears of almost all of the world's most important leaders, many of which were terrible communist dictators. She spent zero recorded time saying one single thing about human suffering, well, obviously human suffering, but anything of worth to those people having to do with, hey, don't do that. She had the ear of the Pope. She could have been like, hey, let's stop child molestation. That seems kind of fucking shit.
Stop fucking children.
But she didn't.
Christopher Hitchens called her a friend of the status quo, and every time she used her influence, it was to maintain the status quo, to maintain the people in power, to maintain conservative values, to talk back down against divorce, against contraception, against abortion, against all these things that make women's lives better. Like, hey, if you're in a shitty marriage that's abusive, divorce is a good option. Nope, says Mother Teresa, it's a sin. Hey, if you've got 20 kids and you can't afford to feed them, birth control is a good option. Nope, says Mother Teresa, it's the biggest threat to our society.
Wow.
Fuck her.
Yeah, she's a terrible person. And the fact that during the few interviews that she gave, she always just talked about, she skirted around the issues and she wouldn't talk about, like, I think often, let's put it this way. If people are victims of motivated reasoning way more often than they think. But one of those times is like if you say, hey, David, tell me about your time at school. I'm in part of a newspaper. Tell me about your school. We're doing a piece on it. You're going to start talking. Your brain starts activating and going, oh, what's this about? Oh, it's a chance for some, fame or something like that. Oh, I'm going to say some good things about the school. More likely that I'm going to get published. Or you may be thinking something along the lines of, ooh, this is published. I want to have a good face here. I've got to worry about our people and the parents. So you start saying good things. That's the kind of shit that she would do about her organizations. But if you're just being honest, then you would just be like, oh, here's what I do. I put them in these houses, these hospices. We actually, we believe in the nobility of suffering. If you actually believed that was truly the greatest way to get closer to God, you would take every chance you get on the platform or on the mic to talk about that. You'd be like, oh, hey, so I really believe in this thing called human suffering. Believe, brings us closer. But she didn't. All the interviews I watched, she's just like, we just help people by moving around. And the funny thing is, she spent very little time in her hospices and homes. Very little. She was flying around on a jet all over the world. On a jet. I mean, imagine that jet didn't have anything ripped out of it, for example. But yeah, she didn't do all that much time actually helping people. The estimation, I can't remember what it was, but it was something like, someone said around 700 hours of her entire life was actually direct care. That's
it was just
insane.
Getting in front of the camera.
It's PR, or just going and talking to people. Yeah, getting money. It's like a fundraiser. It's nuts.
And here's the insult to injury. This is why I've been on this is why I hate the idea of Mother Teresa. It's that her name, Mother Teresa, has become synonymous with the ultimate in charity, the ultimate in serving the poor, the ultimate in giving of yourself for others.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, well, he's good, but he's no Mother Teresa. Like it's just become part of our parlance as a culture to associate Mother Teresa as the apotheosis of charity.
Mhm.
Bill Gates is a fucking atheist, and he saved more than 6 million lives since 2007 by giving away $28 billion. Giving away his own money, $28 billion. He has saved 6 million lives through vaccines and other charity work that he does. There's infographics. You can look them up. It's that number's growing every day. He's saving lives by giving away his own money, whereas Mother Teresa was just giving people a place to die out of the sight of people on the street. And
siphoning the money.
And siphoning the money that was meant for them to the Pope.
I know, saving money on needles by reusing them? Dude, needles aren't that expensive. Jesus. I don't know. It really was, an extreme look on like, okay, save every penny, the poverty idea. I get it. But we're not talking about nuns take that oath for themselves. Like in the army, I took an oath that I had to wear goofy clothes all the time. You have to wear a uniform.
Yeah, you didn't come over to my apartment and be like, "Where's your uniform?"
Yeah, if you're like, "Oh, dude, I feel really sick," I would be like, "All right, well, come on over here and put on these full ACUs for me." And you're like, "Oh, it's really uncomfortable." And I'm like, "Yeah, there's yeah, but you're supposed to be uncomfortable as a soldier." And you're like, "I'm sorry, did you just call me a soldier?" And I'm like, "I mean, just in general, just in general." Yeah. By the way, when you're sleeping last night, I made you take the oath. You're not a soldier.
Yeah, like, exactly. Oh, fuck. Like, yeah. Bill Gates is doing the things that people think Mother Teresa did, but he gets no love. It's all about Mother Teresa.
So in the spirit of the last week tonight, John Oliver, let's end this rant on some good positive movement. I say, from now on, let's just completely take out Mother Teresa in our language, in our vernacular, and replace it with, he's no Bill Gates.
Right, because that would actually make fucking sense. And another action point, if you've heard this and you're like, well, then what the fuck? If I'm donating money to a charity, how am I going to know it's actually going to help anybody? Médecins Sans Frontières or Doctors Without Borders actually helps sick people with the money you're giving them. So if you want to donate to an organization that is doing what Mother Teresa pretended to do, donate to Doctors Without Borders.
And the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And in fact, you can even go to gatesfoundation.org, and they have fact sheets. They're as transparent as they can possibly be about all this stuff. And so give it to them. If I trusted anyone with my charity money, it'd be Bill fucking Gates, a guy who's giving his own money away. Like, he's not getting rich off the charity like many people do.
Like Mother Teresa.
Yeah, like the Vatican, exactly. But he's actually giving money away from his own self, so he's clearly not trying to seek a profit in his work. So that is also another good one. Again, gatesfoundation.org. It's called Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill and
Melinda Gates Foundation, Doctors Without Borders. There are actual real charities out there, and guess what? They're fucking secular. This is a side rant, but don't you hate the like, oh yeah, religious people give more money to charity than atheists? Like, do they, or do they give more money to con artists? Because
and it depends on how you ask that question. Like that came out recently in the Pew Research. So for a long time, people have been tracking the nuns, right? And then people are like, oh, well, the nuns are up to 20%, and then religious defense is, yeah, but that just could mean they're not going to church. They don't certainly identify as anything, but they're Christian. They're Christian. We're going to still count them. But then when you ask the specific question, do you believe in God? Many people say yes, because of the fact that they're afraid to say no. If you deny God, that's like could be, nobody really knows, but could be the unforgivable sin. But then if you say, are you sure there is a God? Almost everyone says no, or the number moves up quite a bit. I think it was the majority.
Of nuns. And we talked about that in one of our last episodes. Like, the majority of nuns also don't believe in a God.
Yeah, exactly. So don't put that bullshit down my throat that this is about what it is. And so, yeah, same thing here. Like, if an organization is like, it can even be called like St. Peter's, church or hospital, but it doesn't mean the doctors inside are not.
When a Mormon is paying his membership dues to get into the temple, his tithing, that counts as a charitable donation. That's not charitable. That's paying your dues for a fucking club you're in. Yeah. Like, that's the thing. Atheists are very giving. They are very charitable because they're actually spending that impulse in places that help people. I remember when I was religious, and you might have been the same way, I would give to charities, quote unquote charities, all the time, but they were things like the Red Cross or the Salvation Army or the Mormon Church, charities that don't have any financial transparency, the Salvation Army that discriminates against gay people, that won't help people who aren't married, things like that. Whereas But here's the perfidious thing. Here's the problem with that is when I would donate that money, I'd be like, cool. I'd look at my budget and say, this much money I donated to the poor. I'm good. I've done my good deed, right? It's the I've done my good deed syndrome, where you're like,
Yeah.
okay, you're less likely to be charitable after you feel like you've just done something charitable.
Yeah.
There's countless studies on this, right? Like you're familiar
Uh-huh.
with the literature. Well, that's the problem with these charitable donations. They're diverting good intentions away from places that could actually use them.
Yeah, that's exactly opportunity cost. It's not just that they're taking all that money and squandering it, and in fact misusing it and not reporting on it, refusing to be transparent, even in places where the laws insist upon it. But what are you gonna do? Sue the church? I don't know. I don't know why they don't kick them out of the country, but whatever.
Yeah, it's the same reason the IRS doesn't actually enforce their stop endorsing political candidates, you fucktards. Now we have Trump as president laws.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, fuck Mother Teresa. Now, from now on, say he's no Bill Gates or she's no Bill Gates, or
Yeah.
Melinda Gates if you want to as well. But blankety blank, they help all kinds of people.
Exactly. And if you're listening and you're Catholic or you've it sucks. It sucks to find out that one of your heroes was a monster, but guess what? That's part of growing up. Don't get mad at the messenger. Mother Teresa was a fucking monster, and if you want to make a difference for the best in your organization, in your church, in your society, stop perpetuating lies. It's like fucking King Jellybean, right? From Rick and Morty. Like
Yeah.
he was a rapist, he a child molester, but they built a statue for him because that message served the powers that be. That's what Mother Teresa is. She's a King Jellybean. Stop promoting it.
Yeah, and find someone who actually is good, like Bill Gates, or
Yeah.
someone even in your own church. Maybe there is a real person that's actually very good. Just don't read
Yeah.
about it on the Catholic site because it's probably full of shit. If they're putting someone like Mother Teresa in because someone had,
Check your sources.
a tuberculosis cyst that over 6 months of course of treatment, she, like almost everyone else in that hospital with the exact same disorder or problem, was cured. Maybe you can't trust Catholic sources at that point. So
Yeah, I mean, for the love of God, like it's so nice that she cured 2 people after she, in her life. I wish she had done her cure magic on all the other sick and dying people that she couldn't be bothered to give 2 shits about.
and she wasn't even present for 2 of them, or the third one. What was the third one? Can't remember. The Brazilian man with a tumor. I don't even know how that guy got it, but anyway, she wasn't even present for those, so it's a little suspicious. Anyway,
Yeah.
enough bitching. Motherfucking Teresa, fuck her. There's another icon thrown down, and hopefully we can make some sort of tangible change, not tangible, but some sort of cultural change, even in the smallest amount, by spreading the truth. And hey, atheists are good people too. So
Yeah, and just a heads up, guys, when someone brings up Mother Teresa and you say, actually, she was a monster, even other atheists are going to look at you skeptically because it's not well known, and we just don't question our implicit assumptions about the reality that we live in.
yeah. But all right, man. Well, this is another good episode. Hopefully, we will come at you again in 2 weeks. Probably we do have the break coming up, and Thanksgiving. I'll be out of town, so we'll figure it out. But we already have a topic, so should be
Yes.
good. All right.
So until then, I'm David.
And I'm Jeremiah.
And fuck Mother Teresa.